Is that all right with you, Barry?
Absolutely.
Barry, to finish our quick conversation with the collective, do you see that as a clearinghouse of resource for those that want to further investigate either what is out there or where they can start with resources? Is that where you're going with that?
It's got several layers to it. One is to be a collective, a clearinghouse for all things disciple maker, and
Mm,
everyone everywhere that has something to offer to the bring to the table to help, provide that culture shift in whatever way they can. And I mean, every tool in the toolbox is worthy, you know.
right.
And we'll get to some other stuff here in a minute, but in regards to that, I want it to be, sort of a library of information, of process, of people, who are providing process for disciple making and whatnot. That's one layer. Another layer is to have a library of discussions, such as what we're doing, and adding that for people to go on and get connected to a discussion at some level and be
Mm,
to either watch videos of our discussions and go, wow, that makes sense to me. How do I connect deeper? What would it look like in my neighborhood, my region, to be able to do something similar, to start a dialogue? I mean, really,
yeah.
not going to change culture without starting a dialogue. And the dialogue can't happen on Sunday morning in church. You know, it's got to happen outside the walls in the community with believers who have the heart to see something, you know. Yeah, so we'll get deeper and deeper into it as we go, but then also to provide information all over the country and naturally the world for people to find places, groups, people that are actually hungry for this, doing this, that are living this out
Right.
locally, because without a local connectivity, the internet's a great resource. It's going to give you lots of information and lots of potential. Like, we can connect relationally with what we're doing right now because we have that heart and we know each other. We have a background with each other. To encourage people to find a handful of people to connect with and continue the dialogue, and then come on the Disciple Makers Collective and share their outcomes, share their experiences, share the things
Right.
that are working, the things that are struggling with, and have this massive community be able to sew in to that place together, with each experience, each different tradition, being able to speak to it, not just a singular voice from one particular brand, but basically, let's look at everything that God's imparted to the body of Christ.
The good thing about that, if many groups started, we could connect ourselves together and not only feed the resources, we could invite them in. What's going on in Sacramento? Tell us about it. Or, uh, you know what I mean? Different ways we can interlink the conversation about discipleship.
Right. And then to your discussion, Barry, is also, to have that discussion linked to the Disciple Makers Collective, but also that's where we can create content for,
Right.
so that I don't really want to have to create a ton of content for the collective. I want that to be the community. And so us as a aspect of the community will contribute to the Disciple Makers Collective together, both as individuals, but also as this conversation
Okay.
grows and shapes and whatnot. So, but man, there are so many out there. Like, for instance, the study PDFs that you sent. I
Mhm.
read those in 2020 when they were published, and so I've followed pretty much every major and minor disciple making disciple shifting, disciple culture oriented group since day one that I could find,
Wow.
you know, and I've rooted and I've dug and I've looked and I've discovered a few things along the way. I've discovered that some of them are just rebranding their same old,
Right.
and not that that's a bad thing, but I think as this conversation expands, we start to recognize, wow, the things that we've always done just aren't bringing any fruit. They're not
You're
really
right.
not creating the command. They're creating our own little party, our little swimming pool of, people that we have in our group, but it doesn't really go out to the world beyond the doors of our church community, our Wednesday night growth group, that sort of thing. We don't really see a culture of disciple makers being birthed out of these programs. The programs are wonderful. They're needed. We have to have them because that's where the information comes from. The depth of
Mhm.
scripture, the idea of how it applies. How do you put it into practical application? As Steve is, well versed in, being able to take a group of guys and get them excited, get them to shift the way they think about what it means to be a believer in Christ and how they should share that with
Mhm.
people in their sphere of influence, and get away from the idea of the big numbers multiplication, Madison Avenue church growth model. I want to write. It's just called the 99, you know,
Mhm.
and it's about leaving the 99 and focusing on one, you know, to see one person filled with the goodness of God through the relationship of another person, who is modeling Jesus to them. Um, and let that be a foundational reality of this. Everybody can meet one person. Everybody can sow into one person. It's when we start looking at it and saying, oh, you need to get 3 people. You need to get 6 people. You need to have a home group with 8 people. You have 20
Mhm.
people from church. All of these things start to just defeat us before we ever get our feet on the ground because
Yeah.
it's in the one-on-one, the life-on-life relationship that we really learn together what it looks like. You
Mhm.
know, I may have walked with Jesus for a number of years in a way that has brought me to where I am today, and you may have just got here via, a meeting last week. But there's something in your wisdom that God created you with that trumps the stuff I already carry.
Yeah.
I need that. I need that from you. That's only going to get sussed out in a relationship, not in a teaching format, right?
Right.
So
Right.
that's the nutshell of where I'm at with that model and what I would like to see come to fruit.
Okay.
I really like that idea, that model, leaving the 99. That has really been on my mind the last
Mm.
couple of years, especially. So much so that I've been thinking about just catch one more man.
Yeah.
But and then teach that man to catch one more man. I get away from the macro and really just get to the micro.
Yes.
Mm.
We all have the capacity to bring one more man into our life. When we think about that and how intentional that is, I I I've really been studying on the model that Jesus provided us. He had 12 guys, but continuously through the Gospels, it continuously reiterates his relationship with Peter, James, and John,
Right.
as though, and it's not stated in this, but it's as though those 3 guys were to pick 3 more within that group of 12 and pour into them. It seemed as though that's what was happening. And I like that. There's some simplicity there. There's some cookies on the low shelf ideas that really allow us, that takes the pressure off of thinking that we have to reach in millions.
Mhm.
That's the Lord's work. He has that capacity. I don't, but I do have the capacity to meet one more man
Right.
and to learn his story and to encourage him and then ask him how I can be his friend. And then like you said, Big B, and to live that out with each other. And I think over time and in different seasons of our life, we have different men coming and going. But I don't want to leave one man back in wherever I've been in the world and not reach back out and then say, hey, who are you talking to today?
Right.
And encouraging them to live this life of kind of it's a selfless life, but you have to reach back out and say, hey, how's it going with so and so? you know did they have their child? Are
Right.
they,
Right.
is everything okay? Knowing what the stories are and then helping them to really focus in on living like that. So I like that, leaving the 99, see what that looks like, because we all have that capacity.
Well, maybe we could
Mhm.
collaborate, on putting some thoughts together and putting something forth with that. Just a little
Yeah.
short sort of an introduction of what relational one anothering and one-on-one discipleship looks like. We could help define some of that in a way that we could put it out there, either through the website or publish something, that could get out there. I'd be
Yeah.
interested in that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
You.
that whole concept that says be one, make one. I mean, that's
Mhm.
so simplistic.
Exactly.
And if everyone was praying for a neighbor, a loved one, a friend, and finding a way to meet with them and eventually see restoration, transformation, all those things that happen, um, we wouldn't have places for all to come and meet. It would have to be very organic that people are coming to the Lord, being discipled, discipling others. In
Right.
fact, that's what he called us to do.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we're not really good at it.
Well,
Yeah.
one of the things I've noticed in the church is that, and culturally speaking, we are an insular culture within ourselves. And I think, reading the study that you had sent out, I wasn't aware of that. I'm glad you sent that to me, and now I'm a bit distressed the fact that it was out since 2020, and I should have known about this before. Yeah, shoulda, coulda, woulda. What I would suggest is, when we leave the 99, it's the Lord saying to us, hey, in your community, with your neighbors, on the airplane, where you're going, because those 99 are the people that should be making disciples themselves.
Mm,
That's what's implied. The sheep are in the pen, but the shepherd's going out to look for the one, to bring that one more back. We should be outward focused. And what we should be teaching the church, what the church should be teaching its members, is that they should be outwardly focused, not insular and so like this within their own
mm,
small community. That, I think that's where it has failed. And going back to your culture question, that's where we have failed the culture. We're not living in the culture.
Yeah.
mm,
Right.
mm.
We've separated ourselves from the culture. We've become this nice little Christian
You're
community
right.
that has its rules, has its morals,
With a secret handshake to get in.
and it's hard to get into because there's a cost to getting into it that on the culture side, on the sociological side, looks a little oppressive, and it hasn't been taught that this is a good thing to join.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like love from the moment you walk through the door, you get ignored, or you get like smothered with platitude and people who act like they want to be your friend, but a month later you really have no connectivity. And that's not always true. I get that
I,
there's sometimes an opportunity, but
yeah.
Steve, your point, and I really want to stress this because it's absolutely critical to why we have what we have. The church being insular means it's inward looking. It's looking at itself. It's looking at each other. We're designed by Jesus to be outward looking, just as you suggest.
Mm,
So we should be a church, a community that's back to back, not face to face. In our intimacy with one another, we're face to face. In our time of fellowship one on one and in small groups and that kind of thing, yes, we're face to face. But in life as believers, we're back to back. We should always be outward looking and looking for how do we love the world the way Jesus called us to. So love others as I loved you, and the only way we can do that is to be looking outward and let his love flow through us to that hungry world, to that broken world, to that sick and twisted part of the world that church doesn't even want to step foot, but the
Mm.
Jesus would be is the places we need to be. And that has every flavor in it that can possibly be, so and then I've always viewed that my model of the church is that it's a triage. It's a place where after you've been out there being Christ to the world, you've taken your licks and paid your prices, you come in and you get,
Mm.
the balm of Gilead.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Up, you get healed, you get whole, you get restored, and you get strengthened by the body, and then you turn around and out you go again, so.
Well, that's just it. I have said this for years. There's 168 hours in a week. 2 of them we spend in church with each other. Maybe 1 of them we spend in a small group. So that's about, now we're down to 165 hours. What have we done with that other 65 hours? And I think if you were to look at Jesus' daily interactions, he got up, he spent time with his father for a bit. We don't know what that looks like, but then he was on the move. I don't see him sitting very well.
Yeah.
When he sits and teaches, that's when he sits. But he's on the move. He's town to town. He's neighborhood to neighborhood. He's in the marketplace. He's at the temple. Every time there's another story or something, he's in another setting, which means he had to move his body there. We should not expect that they will come to us.
Right.
Those lost, that one won't come to us. They have got to be sought out.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's fearful to some people, but it's also to those of us who have more of an adventurous bent, that's okay, because we actually mingle with that one every day, all day long. He's the guy changing my tires, it's my pharmacist. It's, the nurse at the doctor's office. You think of all those other people that you are certain don't have a relationship with the Father. That's the one.
Right.
But we say we don't have the time for it.
Mm.
For some reason, we don't engage. I'm as guilty as that anybody. I the gardener, great guy. My landscaper, great guy. I don't know where he's at spiritually. He's a great guy.
Mm.
But I haven't taken that other 30 seconds to say bless you, or hey, how's your family, or is there anything I can pray for?
Mm-hmm.
Let that go and let that out there and see how that falls, because that's the beginning of an interaction that has an eternal consequence.
Wow. There is a beautiful picture of what we're talking about last week. I hate to say Facebook, but it was. It was a video of this working dog with all these sheep, and he noticed that one sheep didn't make it back. And so he went out looking for this one sheep, and he found him way off somewhere, and he was injured. And he knew that if he didn't stay with him during the night, he would be eaten up. And so he stayed all night guarding him, protecting him, shielding him, and he was on duty.
I was going to say, we're not taught to see ourselves as shepherds.
Mhm.
We're any other tool, we're any other, give ourselves a title for this, that, or the other, the things that, but yet the bottom line is that shepherding the love of Christ to the world through our one anothering, first with each other, and then those of the world that need it, that are crying out, that can only be discovered if we go out, look for them, just like the analogy you just shared. And when we find them, we stay with them. And we bring them into the fold through love, through kindness, through sharing resource, and really discerning the need, instead of just showing up with a Bible tract and presuming that I know what you need. Here it is. Right.
We don't see it as our responsibility.
Exactly. And if we have a disciple making culture in the leadership of the church, and this was something that we started the conversation with, that if we don't train leaders to be disciple makers, this is what they're handed. And I don't even want to judge them or blame them for what they're doing. This is the model that has been evolved for the last 100 years in America. Something's got to give, something's got to change. So who's going to go and challenge these leaders to look differently and take the risk? Because for some of them, it will cost their position. It will cost their church. It will cost their community. But are we willing to leave the 99?
I think that's why 2 Timothy 2:2 is so important, that, that's the one where it says, these things that you have heard and seen of me in the presence of many, find different people that you trust that are worthy to teach others this. So it's not just I see it and I hear it, but I'm becoming that. I think I said maybe a meeting or two ago, I was very impressed with Moses, that, when he went into his tent in the early mornings to spend time with God, eventually there was a Joshua who was a young lad, followed him in there. And for many, many meetings, he was in there. But he was being mentored in the presence of God to take Moses's spot when he died. And I think that kind of mentoring or discipleship happens naturally if we are intentional about spending time with God. God's going to help us see a relationship that we can foster, that come alongside of us. I just want to see more of it, myself included. So 2 Timothy 2:2 is key for us to find others.